Well, hello, my name is Laurie Smith. This is a Survivor Weekend check-in video. It's just a live stream that I like to do. And just for survivors of abuse, so you're not alone and, you can get help. There's lots of ways you can reach out and not suffer on your own. And so I like to do this one, and I had done quite a few before, but then had stopped doing them, and now I'm back doing them again. So they're helpful for me, and they kind of keep me thinking on what I need to work on myself as a survivor, adult survivor of child abuse. So there's many things that I'm kind of always sort of working on. Today I thought we'd talk about the issue of re-victimization. And that's where survivors of abuse of any type, domestic violence or any type of abuse, child abuse, etc., will go on into their adult lives and be re-victimized again. And we don't want that. We really don't. I normally broadcast at 12 noon, but this next 2 Saturdays in a row, I have to change it to 11 o'clock a.m. Mountain Standard Time because I've got some training to do with the ASCA, Adult Survivors of Child Abuse. And so, but if you're interested, you can always catch the archive. But the issue of re-victimization, such a huge deal. I was sitting around thinking about just for myself, over the years, I've worked really hard to make good choices for myself, good life choices on my behalf so that, I'm not re-victimized again as an adult. And, sometimes you can't help it. Things happen and, we are victimized in some way, but we need to make sure that we're not setting ourselves up for re-victimization, because it's just so easy. Many times survivors of abuse will, because if they've grown up in a toxic, abusive environment, then that's their knowledge set. That's how they live their life. They're forced to live that way. Then it's because they, as adults, they don't change that, and so they go into their adult lives making really poor choices for themselves. And I did it myself, so it can happen. And lots of people have. My mom was a victim of re-victimization. She was abused as a child, and then married my dad, who was abusing her whole entire marriage to him. So it can happen. It's not uncommon, actually. And it's really sad because, a person who's already been abused, is then just, lives this sort of horrible, tragic life of more abuse. And just more abuse and more problems, right? And I saw this with within my own family in a couple of situations. Both of my sisters, 2 of my brothers, just had problems with their adult lives as well. And we need to make good choices on our own behalf. It's really important. Those choices need to be, well thought out. What we're doing in our life, what kind of life do we really want to have? That's a question I asked myself at the age of 20, around 2021, in there somewhere, because I needed to make some changes in my own young adult life in order to stay alive and actually, have a decent life. Because I was heading to a life of, a drug user, who knows, end up dead on the street somewhere, drug overdose, any number of things, and I knew this, and I at that point around 2021, I really was looking for something better. And, I thought this can't be all there is to life. Just kind of suffering and struggling and, abusive situations and, abusive, violent sort of lifestyle. And so I thought, I don't want to live like that. And I see so many people doing it. I mean, anybody can see what's going on. You just have to check out the headlines. Read some of the headlines out there of what people are going through. And these are people just like you and me. And, I'm not running anybody down because I know life is hard. But we do have to make good choices for ourselves. Do we want to live a life of violence or a life of abuse? Or, as an adult, we have to make those choices. It's not easy to do. And so it does take time to get into a better situation. It just doesn't happen overnight for most people. Maybe for some it does. They just, for some reason, I want to say luck out and things work out for them and they, can move on to a better life quickly. But for most people, it doesn't work that way. It's a series of steps that we have to take, in getting our physical surroundings in a better situation. A lot of times doesn't happen overnight, sometimes takes years. You know, getting abusive, toxic people out of our life and away from us. And many times people that are stuck with, you know, child custody issues can't lose that abuser because that abusive person is still in their life because there's children involved. This is it's a tragic situation. It really is, and we really, as adult survivors of child abuse, I mean, even if you're a survivor of domestic violence, same thing. Need to be very careful and cautious about what type of relationships we enter into. And I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to me. I'm very cautious about relationships that I enter into, whether it's friendships or any kind of relationship, because I don't want to be re-victimized. So my boundaries are very set and very clear, and sometimes they're a little harsh because I tend to, my trust levels are not, they're not fluid, they're very rigid. And so it takes me a while to trust somebody enough to get into some type of relationship, whether it's a friendship or anything, right? So, and I do that for my own protection because I don't want any more abuse in my life. I don't want to live a life of people, of arguing and fighting and people hitting each other and throwing things and threatening to kill each other or kill me, or, I don't want to be around that stuff anymore because that's how I grew up. And I spent my youth in that and my young 20s in that until about the age of 21, I'd say. And I decided, I want something different. I want a good life. And it's boring, no doubt. No more partying, no more drugs, no more of that, wild sort of exciting lifestyle of out on the streets, running with the gang or running with your friends and, just partying it up and thinking you're so cool. There's no more of that. So yeah, it's really quite boring, but it's just so much healthier. And then at the end of the day, I'm not worried that, someone's going to try to kill me, or, you know, someone's going to try to rip me off, you know what I mean, or whatever. We need to be very, very cautious, with who we allow in our lives. It's very important. And I think, I see so many young people out here today because, I'm older now, I'm like 55, and I was one of those people, a young person, not in so much trouble, but just having a horrible lifestyle, horrible existence on the planet. And I see these young people, doing the same thing. And my heart just goes out to them because if they don't make those changes, they're either going to be killed, they're going to die of some sort of drug overdose, or die in a drug deal gone bad or something, or they're just going to be killed by somebody in an abusive relationship. I see these young people and my heart just breaks for them because I'm like, you need to make the right choices, man. You need to want something better. And, a healthy lifestyle, you know. And I mean, some people would say, but that's boring. But you know what? You have to make your choices. I've seen too many people go out and, be killed and murdered and, die of drug overdoses and die on the street, drug overdoses and homeless. And I've seen too much of it in my own personal life, but I've also seen too much of it just in the city that I live in. And, the people that I live around in the downtown area where I live, there's so much of that going on. And I'm like, oh, if they could just make those good choices, we have to at some point decide what kind of life we want to live. Do we want to live a life of abuse and, just horrific stuff happening to us, or do we want to have a better life, And I made that choice early, and I'm glad that I did, because I'm sure it saved my life, absolutely. So, it's tough. It really is. And I mean, as far as abusive relationships go, sometimes we don't realize we're getting into a relationship with an abusive type. That happened to me with my first relationship. And I talked about it on my videos on my Board and Health series. And I mean, I didn't recognize toxic behaviors because I grew up in an abusive home and I grew up abused. So it was just normal for me. And I got involved with a guy that I loved and I cared about very much. And he loved me. And we both loved each other very much. But the issue is his behavior was becoming more and more abusive as the relationship went on. And I was really cluing into it because that's kind of how I grew up, and so I wasn't snapping that this is not okay. Um, and finally, one day he punched a cupboard right next to my head instead of my face, and he was like, "I'm gonna hurt you," you know. And I mean, I was like 22 years old, 20, yeah, 22 and a half or something, 23, right in there. And I'm like, "Well, why would you do that? You know, we're supposed to love each other. You're not. Why would you want to hurt me?" You know. And he grew up abused. He's an alcoholic, recovering alcoholic, and he just felt that he could not control himself. He was going to hurt me. So he's like, we have to break it off. You know, after a few months of sort of fighting back and forth, not being all that nice to each other, he broke it off. And I mean, at the time, my heart was broken, but now I'm really glad because, we would have ended up in one of these couples in an abusive relationship. If there were children involved, it'd be a real mess. So we have to be really careful who we get involved with, you know, because there are a lot of abusive types out there, and they think that's life. They think that's life. They think that's fine. They're in, and it's men and women. It's not just men. It's both. And for some reason, their way of looking at life is different than somebody who doesn't want to be abused and who wants to have a good life. And they actually like that. That's what they like to live. My parents were like that. They could have got help. They could have got, they were offered help so many times, but they wouldn't take it. And they were just abusing each other. It was ridiculous, and abusing us. But the issue is they didn't want help. So many times people don't. And they want to continue living that lifestyle. And for me, it was like, no, no. I want something better, even if it just means a simple life, of no craziness going on around me, a very simple, peaceful life. That's all I'm asking for. And that's basically all I've got. But I'm happy because I don't have anybody abusing me, and I don't have to worry about, somebody coming home and abuse me physically or emotionally, psychologically, or in any way, or rip me off, or threaten to kill me, which I had my life threatened many times as a child and as a teen and into my 20s. So, I just was really tired of being thrown up against the wall with my life threatened, or beaten on the ground. I was like, how long do I have to put up with this? You know what I mean? I'm not doing anything to cause this. And it's like, for some reason, I was just a target for people wanting to kill me for some reason. And there was no reason for it. I was like, come on now. And so after about, so many years of that, I hit 21, right about 2021. And I said, no more. That's it. I don't care. I'm not allowing any abusive people in my life whatsoever. And I don't. I'm very particular and careful about the types of people I allow in my life. And, I'm very actually lonely because there's not very many people just want to hang out and be friends. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, if you're not running with the crowd, drinking, doing drugs, or I don't know, nobody wants to hang around with you. So it's like, well, and I'm 55 now, but I'm saying, even in my 30s, I ran into some nice people and I had some nice friends. But the issue is those days of drug use and partying and all of that are over, and they were a long time ago, in my 20s. So most people don't start that stuff till they're in their 20s, and they carry it on till their 40s. What a horrific life as an adult, Um, two of my brothers killed themselves in their 30s, but they were both heavy drug users, heavily addicted to different types of drugs. And, they didn't, they had actually opportunity to get help many, many times. And they both committed suicide in their mid 30s. And that's just horrific to me, because I think about the lifestyle that they led. I know what kind of life they were leading, that they had while they were on the earth. And all they were doing was re-victimizing themselves. They grew up abused. They never, ever, ever got a chance to live a good, like normal, decent life with good people in their life, right? And so that's heartbreaking to me, to see these people out here on this was many years ago now, but, I'm 55. I see these young people out here on the streets around me. I live downtown Calgary, like I said, and, so many of them are drug addicted. Who knows where they came from? They may have come from abuse. Who knows? Who knows their story? But they're not going to live long. You can't live long living like that in that lifestyle. I just can't. And my heart just breaks for them, because they can't. They're so far gone, they can't even make the right choice. It's so horrific. And so, we, like me, I have to make good choices for myself. I'm speaking to myself. You know what I mean? It depends on what kind of life I want to have, who I allow in my life, right? And what I'm going to do with my time. You know, so I've never, since I quit using drugs at the age of 21, I actually have never used drugs again because I quit for good. I was like, no, never, not doing it. I don't even drink because because I have an addictive personality, so I don't allow myself to drink. And so I'm not a teetotaler, I mean, I've had a drink here and there, but I don't keep it around, and I don't buy it. I don't care about it. It's like whatever, because I know I'd be an alcoholic in no time flat. Like, hey, this is great. And I'd be on it, and I'd be like, okay, Ellen, an alcoholic, bad news. So I don't even allow that around me, really. I'm just like, whatever, no. I'm too busy doing life straight and, reaching out for help and working on my healing journey as a survivor of abuse, right? I'm very careful, like I said, about who I let in my life and what I will allow, especially now that I've done a lot of work on my healing journey, set the boundaries, did, I don't know, 2, 3 years study on boundaries and what they are and how important they are, to have good, solid boundaries in your life, what you'll tolerate, what you won't, what you accept, what you won't. It's very, very important, you know. And, at the end of the day, I'm in a safe place, you know. And things could change, but I'm going to reach out for help. And that's the difference between a lot of people. I didn't start reaching out for help till the age of 42 for my survivor issues, you know what I mean? So some people don't until much later in life, right? But I figured, you know what? It's better late than never. And so that's why, I'm so big on, telling people to do the same thing. You got to reach out, you got to get help. Don't allow yourself to be abused. If you're in an abusive situation right now, you need to get to a safe place. You really do. If you're a young person and you're listening to this and you're being abused, you need to file a report with several agencies, not just the police. You got to contact, the child abuse agencies as well as the police, and you need to get help. Do not allow yourself to continue to be abused. If you're in a domestic violence situation, you need to get a safety plan and get somebody to help you get a safety plan and get out, and don't allow yourself or your children to be abused. It's not okay. It's not okay at all. And people are dying. I look at the headlines because I'm not one of these people that's like, oh, I just can't look at that. It's too disturbing, because I mean, from where I came from, that's just that was my life. I was growing up in such a horrific situation. I look at those headlines and I'm just praying for those people because I'm like, this is terrible. People are ending up dead, young people, in their 20s, 30s, ending up murdered by these guys. They have no idea, who these guys are. They hook up with them. They're fun. They're drinking. They're having fun. Before you know it, they're dead. Yeah, their life is wasted. Talk about making some poor choices. You know what I'm saying? But people are doing it, and they do it all the time. And I mean, people think this world is a safe place and that you can just hook up with anybody and that they won't kill you. But see, the problem being is that that's not true. The reality is that it's a big possibility. If you don't know that person and you just hook up with them and you're going out for some drinks and some dates and having fun, but you don't really know that person, you could end up dead. It's just that easy. Look at the headlines. Some of these people only meet these people, and it's usually women, sadly enough, young girls, like 20s, early 20s, meet these guys. They don't know who they are. They're off having fun for a week somewhere. Then they find their body dead. There's a lot of psychotic people out there, and you have to keep yourself safe. I have to keep myself safe. So yeah, I'm very careful about who I allow in my life and who I don't, and who I will allow to even get to know me, personally. Because you do have to protect yourself. This is not a safe world. It's not okay. It's not safe. It's not safe in our own families. I mean, I grew up abused, so I already knew that. And then one of my brothers was murdered, so I knew, people kill each other, right? My life was being threatened as a child, so I knew people were always threatening to kill me, trying to kill me. A few times some strangers did too. And then even some friends, boyfriends of my friends, like my friends' boyfriends were violent towards me and threatening my life. So it's kind of like, you know, this stuff is actually kind of the norm out there, right? You don't want that for your life. You know, you don't want that. You don't want to end up dead somewhere because you made the wrong choice and just, you know, decide you want to go have fun with somebody for a while. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not worth it, you know? And it's just sad. It's just really sad. You see these headlines out here. And so that's kind of what made me think about doing this show, because this last week I've seen so many. I'm just astounded that so many of these young people's lives are just gone, you know? And, a lot of times they don't even, sometimes they do catch the person who did it, but sometimes they don't, And it's like, it's just tragic, right? So make the right choices, start looking at what kind of a lifestyle you have right now. Is it safe? Are you being abused? I mean, so many of us aren't wealthy. I'm not talking about that. You know what I mean? I'd like to be wealthy too, but I'm not. But I've always been poor, so like whatever. But the issue is we got to think about what our safety issues. What type of environment are we in? You know, um, is there somebody around us that's toxic, that's abusive? You know, and are we being abused? Well, we need to get help, right? So don't allow yourself to be victimized in this mess. It's not okay. And there's agencies you can reach out to for help, and it's not the greatest help because there's no perfect solution to this situation. There really isn't. And so none of that help's going to be perfect, right? But eventually, after a few years, I mean, I know so many survivors of like domestic violence and stuff who are really happy now. Some of them are older, that's their 50s, 60s, but they've gotten their lives away from the abuser, and they're having a good life. And I'm happy for them. Absolutely. Right. They made the right choice. They got some help. Right. Hi, Melissa. I hope you're okay. No, you're not late. I actually had to do this show early because I've got 2 training sessions in this today and then next Saturday. So with the ASCA, Adult Survivors of Child Abuse, because I'm starting a group up again. So they have a training session going right now. So that's good for me. And they do it so many times per year. And so I'm going to be going to that training. So I had to bump the show. I had to move the show up 1 hour. So I'm sorry about that. And so next week too, it'll be at 11 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. So it's 1 hour earlier than I had been doing them. So just for today and next Saturday, and then after that it'll be back to the regular time. So, oh, you're sick. Oh, I'm sorry. That's not good. That's not good at all. It's just things are so hard for people right now. I know so many people myself who are struggling, going through so many different things. Not even in my city, like all around the world, basically. And there's not much I can do to help them. You know what I mean? Except for just to be a friend and an ear and a shoulder, because I know how hard it is. That's kind of why I'm doing these shows now, because I don't have a job, and jobs, I've applied for jobs, and the jobs just aren't, they're there, but they want a degree of some sort or something that I don't have. There's very little out there that I can do. So, and physically, some of it's just, physically not able to do that work anymore. So it's kind of like, what do you do? I'm hoping to be able to broadcast till at least August, somewhere around there, July, August. So that's why I'm doing all this broadcasting now, because I'm like, well, I may run out of internet at some point, so I'm just going to do all this now, and that way, if I run out of internet, then it won't, whatever. At least I got to do something. So yeah, it's awful. Just hang in there. I'm looking for better days myself. I know so many people are. I know so many people that are in such horrible situations. Homelessness. There's nothing we can do to help. It's like, oh my God, like this world's mess right now. It really is. And so, but there's still help out there. That's why I'm telling people you got to reach out, because that's what I'm doing. And we have to just keep looking and keep making those phone calls and keep knocking on. Well, now with COVID-19, if their offices aren't open, we got to try to contact them by phone or by email or whatever, or online. But whatever you got to do, don't give up, because we don't deserve to have our lives go down, just because, you know what I mean? Like, we are deserving of a good life, just like everybody else, a decent, safe, average, normal existence, no matter what that is. You know what I mean? Like, if I don't get a job, I mean, I'm going to end up on welfare. That'll be the first for me. I've always been able to work, and I'm not happy about that. But you know what, though? Life is life. Sometimes it throws, you know, sour balls, whatever you want to call it. Like sometimes it's just not a good time. That's why I do these shows, because I'm very open and honest. It's like sometimes life really sucks. Let's just put it that way. And sometimes it just sucks for years. I mean, this last few years has been kind of horrible for me. But at least I'm not being abused and I still have a roof over my head. So that's why I'm very thankful. But the issue is, there's people out there right now being abused, no roof over their head. It's not okay. You know what I mean? But I'm just trying to encourage survivors today to, survivors of abuse of any type, like, child abuse, domestic violence, right? To not allow yourself to be re-victimized. Like if you're in an abusive situation right now, you need to get help. One of my good friends was actually murdered by her husband. And she was young. Like, she was a young mother of two boys. And she wasn't even, I think she was 20, 21. She was just young. She was younger than me. This was one of my friend's boyfriend's sister, and that's how I knew her. But she was murdered by her husband. And those two boys lost their mom. They were too young, so they were like 2 and 1, so they wouldn't even remember her, in coming years. So now they're grown, I'm sure. This was many years ago. But, you know, people just think this stuff doesn't happen, but it does. We need to, like I said, make good choices on our behalf, and set boundaries on what we're going to allow in our life and what we're not. Abuse is not okay. I know so many couples, I've known couples over the years, because I grew up abused, hung around with a lot of people who were abused, and also then continued that into their adult life. And I mean, I knew couples that were abusive to each other, and it wasn't just the guy, it was also my friends who were these girls who were causing these problems, and that's how they lived their life. Well, that's what my parents did, and I'm like, man, do you really want that lifestyle? Like, is that really what you want? Because that's a horrific lifestyle. But for some people, they don't know that there's anything better. They don't realize that you don't have to be in an abusive relationship. It doesn't have to be about abuse and violence and, always that kind of rush of, oh, kind of, some people get used to it. It's kind of like a trauma rush type thing where you sort of get used to living a violent lifestyle, and then that's kind of what you look for. I know as a teen, that's sort of how I lived, because that's how I grew up, and I sought out extreme danger. So I was quite often wrecking my cars, doing massive amounts of drugs, not caring if I OD'd or not, this kind of stuff, just living very dangerously. And I cut that off, like I said, at the age of 21. But the thing is like so many people just continue on in that. And then in their adult lives later, they're still doing it, and it's such a sad way to live. It's not at all okay. And there's some people out there, I think, that don't realize that life is not about abuse. That's not the norm. It's like, the norm is not that. You know what I mean? That's actually very toxic, and it's not okay. But it's just that nobody's shown them anything different. They've never sought out anything different. They don't see anything different because their whole life is violent. They're around violent people. That's just what they think life is all about. Right? And it's like, no, not in my world, man. I wanted something different. I wanted a peaceful life where people were going to treat me decently, and I was going to do the same for them too. You know what I mean? And mutual respect, mutual human dignity, human rights. I'm big on human rights, and just having a decent life with people that care about you, because that's what I always wanted, was just somebody to care about me. Because my parents didn't, my family didn't, my friends did, however. Thank God, for my friends, my young friends when I was young. But so many people don't have that, and they don't, even as an adult, later ever find that, you know, somebody to just enjoy life with, just somebody who cares about them as a person for who they are, and wants the best for them. And that's a good life. That's the way I live. And it's like, I'm thankful that I made those choices to get, to have this kind of lifestyle instead of a violent, abusive, drug-filled existence of that exciting trauma stuff. There's a word for it, but I can't think of it at the moment. But it's not okay. No, but I see these young people out here, and a lot of them are dying. It just breaks my heart because I'm like, man, you will never know what a good life is. What a simple, good life is. Right? Like I said, it's not about money because otherwise I wouldn't be happy because I don't have any. I'm quite often broke, but the issue is not about money. It's about knowing that I can close my door and I'm safe. Nobody's going to abuse me. You know, I'm not around toxic people, running me down or making me feel horrible all the time. You know, I keep people in my life who are mutually uplifting to me. So I do the same for them. So I uplift them. They uplift me. And so we mutually uplift each other. And therefore, we're always looking out for each other's best interests as friends. So I've got some wonderful friends in my life. And, that's great. It's wonderful. And no children should ever have to grow up in abuse. And sadly enough, there's so many of us out here. And that's why I'm doing these shows. And that's why I continue to do these shows, so many years later, because there's so many of us out here. It's like unbelievable. And growing up in that, you should have never had to go through any of that. It's not okay. And that's, people would say, well, how did you figure that out? Probably because I watched other people with their families. I had some friends who had some decent, loving parents, and I was at their house hanging around, periodically over the years. And I realized, like, hey, they're not beating on each other. They're not calling each other names. And, the parents aren't beating on each other. They're not hurting the kids. The kids love their parents. And, just a good, healthy environment. And I thought, well, I guess that's good compared to what I've got at my house. You know what I mean? I'm like, I kind of like that. It made me feel special. Like they would say nice things to me, especially when I was young, 12, 13. And they would be like, say stuff like, oh, we wish you were our daughter. And, you're just a wonderful kid. And I was like, God, I'd never heard that before in my lifetime. I was like, wow, usually I was getting a slap in the head or, knocked down or, yelled at and screamed at and called names and stuff. And I was like, I had never heard any of that. So it just hit me like a ton of bricks. And I was like, oh, I like that. That's nice. You know what I mean? I really felt special. I was like, all of a sudden these people were like, you're a wonderful girl and you're just doing so great. And, even though I wasn't, I was using drugs and I was a punk. But the thing is, they were just trying to be nice. And they could see I was struggling and I was hurting. And, it's just by their example, really, is kind of what got me to see the truth. And some stuff on TV too, where you could see some normal family type stuff, where it was somewhat seemed like it was kind of normal, and I'd watch that and I'd be like, wow, that's the way life's supposed to be. Not with what I got going on here in the background, with my parents throwing stuff across the room at each other and cursing each other and beating on each other. It's like, that's not what life is about. So I started to look around and I'm like, wow, this is no good. This is not the way it's supposed to be. And that stayed with me, and as a like 21-year-old realizing that I was going to end up dead in a drug overdose in a gutter somewhere, or a drug deal gone bad, killed, raped, whatever. I'm like, I got to start making some choices that are healthy. You know what I mean? And I got off the drugs. That was the first start. It's like, okay, I'm going to get off the drugs and I'm never going to do them again. And I'm going to learn how to live a very, simple, boring existence of no partying, because that was my life, was partying from like, a young teen to 21. And I was like, so then I just, gonna just be alone and bored for a couple of years until I can get over this addiction. You know what I mean? So I got off the drugs, and it's tough. Well, Melissa, that's a good question, and I think children, to a certain extent, aren't going to it depends on their age. Young children don't understand that kind of stuff anyway. You know what I mean? Kids, when they get older, sometimes they will ask questions about like why their parents were a certain way, what happened, why, for instance, why was their mom sick for years. Um, I think if they're older, you can kind of start to explain things to them. You know what I mean? And when they're too young, there's not much you can say. They won't probably understand a lot of it anyway. You know, um, my mom was very sick when I was like she was sick when I was born. She was sick before I was born. I was born C-section because she was dying and they had to take me out so that because I was dying and she was dying. And so my mom was sick my whole entire life, but a lot of it was from abuse. And I mean, it wasn't just that she was just sick. My dad was abusing her, and she was abused as a child too. So she was just a mess, and she had too many children. She was told to not have so many children, right? And so, like after the fifth one, they told her you're going to die. You have any more? And she had four more. So, but two didn't make it, but me and my sister did. So this is the thing. Yeah, young children, it depends on how old they are, and I think just honesty, just being honest with them, that's the whole issue. Children, like little children, I mean, they don't quite understand everything. So, but older teens, kids start hitting the teens age. It's better to be truthful with them because they're not dumb. They could see stuff going on. It's better just to be honest with them, you know. I think truth is always important in every relationship, especially between parents and like teenagers, and trying to explain how, why certain things happened or certain things go a certain way. Honesty is probably the best policy because at least you can say, hey, at least I didn't lie to you. I'm just being honest, right? And honesty is everything, especially in relationship stuff. Um, it's tough, it's hard, and it's hard on the children, right? Very, very hard. So, but yeah, I would just say, if you're struggling and you're having a hard time, like, don't give up. Like, don't, when you make a phone call and they don't want to help you, well, then you make another phone call to another place. You know what I mean? And then they don't want to help you, and then you make another phone call to another place. You just keep knocking on doors, making phone calls until you find somebody who's going to help you. Because that's what I do. That's what I'm going to continue to do. Because sometimes, you run into somebody that's just, they're like a blank slate and they don't see your problem. They don't even want to help. And then, you leave feeling like, well, I needed help. They're helping all these other people. Why are they not helping me? Then because I was abused as a child, I start to feel like, well, I guess, what? I'm just like, I've got the big L on my forehead, loser or something. I don't deserve help. I just deserve to go, you know, live a horrible existence. Like, this is not okay. To help somebody else, they can help you. So if they're helping somebody else, they can help me. And that's why I'm saying I'm always trying to just reiterate that with people, because, so many times we'll make a phone call, we'll start looking for help for some resources or something that we need, right? And the door is shut. And then we're like, well, why bother? You know what I mean? That whole attitude of like, there's no point. Nothing ever works out. Well, I mean, I've been there, right? The issue is that no, that's not how you do it. You just get back on the phone and you continue to call and you continue to make a bunch of noise, and until somebody listens to you and you get some help, right? No matter what it is. Because we have the right to get help just like everybody else, So important. So, like I said, you might run into somebody who's not helpful, doesn't want to help. Well, then we just got to keep looking, so important. And, don't allow yourself to be abused. Like I said, if you're in an abusive situation, make sure you get help. If you're in a domestic violence situation, you think your life is going to be threatened, you need a safety plan. You need a safety plan, and you need to get somebody to help you create that safety plan and get out, right? And get your children to safety, right? If you have children, and if you're, like I said before, if you're a minor, if you're a young person here and you're listening to this, do not allow yourself to be abused. Don't just report the abuse to one group, like the police or whatever. You got to report to several, the same report. And that way it can be logged with several different groups, not just the police, not just the child abuse prevention people, like child help or whatever. You need to make several reports and have several witnesses and have, like, who can witness that you've made these reports. and get yourself to safety and do not allow yourself to be abused. It's not okay, you know? And it's just so important, right? Because no one should ever have to be treated like that, you know? No one. This is not okay. In today's world, it's sort of like everywhere you go, that's what you see. I see it. I see it in the headlines. I see it all over the place. I see it on Facebook. Um, it's just everywhere. Articles and TV reports, Fox News, all the different news channels, not just Fox, but I'm saying just using them as an example. All the headlines from all the different news agencies out there are reporting all of these children being abused, young girls and women being taken off into the sex trafficking industry, young girls killed and murdered by somebody who just wanted to party for a week or whatever, and they end up dead. And I'm telling you, this is not okay. This is a very sick and twisted world. It's not okay. None of this stuff is okay, you know? And there's a whole group out there that's saying, well, why not? This is kind of fun living. It's like, you call that fun? It's not fun. You know what I mean? No, it's not okay. So, like I said, if you're a person who's not sure about, how to keep yourself safe, you don't know if you can make those right choices for yourself, you got to start reaching out for some help. People that can help you to actually learn how to do that, right? So that you don't become re-victimized, because that's basically what I was talking about here today. Well, thank you, Gina. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And yeah, well, I would say so too. Like I said, at the age of 42, I was going to commit suicide for the last time after years of, the issue of suicidal ideation mainly, but just always planning my suicides. And 42 years old, that was it. I was like, no, I'm reaching out. I'm going to get help, and that's where my healing journey started. So, I don't mix my spirituality with this show, but with anything to do with the one child abuse survivor and whatnot, because so many survivors of abuse are hurting, and they don't want to hear anything about God. Where was God when the abuse was happening? I know, because I was there. I'm one of those people that's how I was. And I tell you, I mean, I was just lost for so many years, and lost in my own, the whole horror of growing up abused, And so I'm glad to be on this side of it, let me tell you, because I wouldn't be here today at all. I wouldn't be here today if God wouldn't have got a hold of me. So, but I that's why I do my biblical stuff separate. But the thing is I know how hard it is for people. I know why there's, the struggles and why they would be angry at God, because I was very, very angry at God myself. As I believed in God. I just was very angry at him. And so I get it, So, but I really appreciate it. And I just wanted to be a voice as long as I could be, to try to help people, to hold in there and not give up. Because I've seen too many people give up, including two of my brothers who killed themselves, and that's heartbreaking to me, because then my abusers won, because they managed to, abuse them their whole youth and their whole childhood. And then they went on to have these horrific adult lives until their mid-30s and then killed themselves. So, this is not okay. Right? That's why I'm so, determined to fight for my own personal rights. And that's why I'm always encouraging other people to do it too. It's like, you have rights. You have rights on this planet. You really do. As a human being, you have the right to a good, decent life. First of all, you have the right to life. No one has the right to kill you. And also, you have the right to not be abused. No one has the right to abuse you. It's against the law. It's illegal. They're getting away with it, obviously. But the thing is you need to get to safety. That's why I keep saying, right? You have the right to there's all sorts of human rights that you have, but the main important ones is you have the right to life, and a good life. You need, we as human beings all share these rights, right? But abuse survivors don't know that, because their rights were taken away from them as children, especially as children, even some domestic violence situations. But the thing is abused children, they don't know they have any rights. And then they grow up, they don't realize that, yeah, I have a right to have a good life. I don't have to continue on in this mess that was created for me by my abusers, whoever these people were. And, I can get help, whatever type of help works for us. That's why I'm out here doing this all the time, because it's like, whatever type of helps works for you, that's great. That's, we're all different. We all need different types of help, right? And it's like, just as long as you keep reaching out and don't give up, not ever, not even on the worst, hardest day ever. Because like I'm saying, I've been there, and I mean, probably most of us have. We have periods of time in our life where we're just like, I can't do it, right? But you have to, yeah, and it's hard. We have to do it. We have to keep going, keep reaching out, and like I said, you make those phone calls. You call a crisis line if you can't cope. You call somebody. You know, so many times that we don't have people in our life that can help us. Maybe we burn too many bridges, right? Maybe people just look, say, oh, well, if they want you to have help, but they only help you if you do it their way. That's not help, by the way. Just so you know, there's a lot of people out there that want to give people help. They say, oh, I'll help you, but they only help you if you do it their way. That's not help. That's almost, psychologically toxic behavior, right? Um, there's good help out there, but you have to keep reaching out, right? And that's why I always say, some people say, well, I have reached out and I just hit rock walls. I hit these walls, and the doors weren't open. And it's like, well, that's the issue. Where one door's not open, you have to keep going. You have to keep making those phone calls, and you have to keep trying, because where one or two doors aren't open, you hit the one that is, and they'll get you some help, right? Because eventually some agency will work with you. It just depends on which one you can get a hold of, and you meet a decent person who's willing to help you, right? Because some of the people that work in those jobs shouldn't be there. That's a fact, but they are. There's not much we can do about it, right? I've ran into several people like that, and I'm like, you shouldn't even be sitting in this job because you don't care about people. But you can't really say that, because if you do, they blacklist you as a person who's causing problems and an issue, right? So you're just kind of sitting there just going, but the thing is there's good people out there too. So no, there's not all just bad people. There's good people out there too. That's why you got to keep looking. So in any situation, you find a therapist that isn't working for you, find another one. You find a doctor that's not working for you, find another one. That's what happened with me. I had a doctor that wasn't doing anything for me. I'm like, you know what, I'm going to find another doctor. I got one, and he's been awesome. See, it's like, well, if he wouldn't have worked out, I would have just kept looking for another one. See, because some of these people, they're terrible at their jobs. That's all there is to it. They shouldn't be in those jobs, but they are. So there's not much you can do. Just keep looking, right? Make phone calls. Some group says, no, we can't help you. Then you make another phone call to another agency. Tell them what you need, and they say, well, no, we can't help you. You have to try this place. Sometimes it takes months and months to get things in place, like months. And those are long, hard months. And that's why I always tell people, it's really like, I really rely on my support group stuff. My people that, support groups that I am involved with, like ASCA, for instance, because I trust them, the Adult Survivors of Child Abuse Memorial Center program, because they're all run very safely and, by a format, and they're all a very safe place to be for survivors of abuse. But I also have some Facebook groups that, I belong to. And I mean, it's very helpful because, if I'm having difficulties or whatever, I can take my stuff to them, and I can get some support for people saying, you can do this. Have you tried this? Did you call this place? You know what I mean? They help make suggestions. What can I do? I need help. There is resources, but sometimes we just can't find them, or we don't know where to look or how to find that stuff. And so that's why it's just important to make those phone calls. So that's why I get on here and say, ramble on and on about this stuff, because people are struggling, people are hurting all over the world. But, even in North America, where, most people, that I can connect with are hurting and struggling. So many people, especially with this COVID-19 thing, are losing their homes, their businesses, no jobs, what are we going to do? Well, we need to reach out and get some help. And actually, know in the back of our mind that we actually deserve that help just like everybody else, And so, because sometimes those agencies will make you feel like, what are you doing here? That's what they made me feel like last year, because I had to go get some help. And I was like, well, I'm here because I can't get a job. That's why I'm here. You know what I mean? They're just like, look at me like, I'm like, don't look at me like that. You're helping all these other people around here. You know what I mean? Like, that's just terrible. We have to stand up for ourselves. We really do. As a survivor of abuse, it's a little bit intimidating, and that doesn't mean being abusive to somebody else. We have to do it in a way that says, I have rights, and I have rights. I have the right to stand up for myself. I have the right to protection, to a good life, to all the human services and human resources out there that everybody else has, you know? So that's what I'm saying. You got to be your own best advocate. You really do, because you need to know for yourself what you need and what's the best thing going to be for you in your situation. So that's kind of what I want to talk about today. Just not being re-victimized. Be careful who you allow in your life. Don't enter into relationships without knowing too much about a person. Get to know that person before you start, moving in with them and hooking up with them, and make sure they're not abusive. And even then, you can still end up with an abuser, because there's lots of narcissists and people out there who are very good at deception and can, sort of fake people out, right? Which they do all the time. But that's why you got to really watch them, to watch their behaviors, and be careful who you get involved with in any relationship, friendship, whatever, work partnership, you know, because there are some really untrustworthy, abusive people out there, obviously, right? And they're all over the place. And they just think it's fine to do this sort of thing. And that's the way they live their life. But the thing is you don't have to be a part of it. You can find good, decent people, but sometimes it means being alone for a little while and making that choice to say, well, I'd rather be alone than to allow somebody to move into my life who's going to mistreat me in some way, whether it's physically, emotionally, verbally, sexually, psychologically, whatever. I'd rather be alone, than to allow somebody to abuse me. So, we need to learn how to protect ourselves, because as children, we couldn't protect ourselves. And hi, Shannon, how are you? I hope you're having a good day, and hope everything's going okay. And yeah, we need to learn how to protect ourselves, because especially in domestic violence situations or child abuse situations, we don't know. You're not late. Actually, I'm early. Sadly enough, I'm sorry. I had to move the show up an hour because I've got 2 ASCA training schedules today and next Saturday, and they're right at the time that I would normally be doing the show, 12 o'clock Mountain Standard Time. So I had to bump the show up because these are some training sessions I'm going through, just 2. So it's only today and next Saturday, and then after that I'll be back on my normal time. If you wanted to come and join me here, it'll be 12 o'clock. Normally it's 12 o'clock noon Mountain Standard Time. So yeah, I'm sorry about that. I actually will post updates in my discussion area on YouTube in the discussion thing. If I'm going to be late or changing a show, I usually post it there a day or so ahead of time. Today I just posted that kind of late. But normally if I know, I'll post it there. So letting people know, it's kind of like, oh, I had to change the time or whatever, change the day, sort of thing. I don't think I'll have to do that very often. It's only because I'm training for the ASCA, because I'm going to start a group. I'm starting a group up. So. But yeah, we're just talking about today. If you want to go back and listen to this, it's up to you. But it's sort of just rambling on about re-victimization, because survivors of abuse, child abuse, will then quite often, not always, but it's, it does happen where, people will become victimized later in life. So not only were they abused as a child, but then they end up getting into these abusive relationships later in life. And it's just horrible, right? It's just so, so sad. I mean, that's what happened to my mother. It's not typical, I would say. It's not typical, but it does happen. It happened to several members of my family. And it kind of could have happened to me, but it didn't, thankfully. But the thing is I started to learn how to make good choices. And I actually really sat down and thought, hey, am I going to, what kind of life do I want to live? A life of just, being spun out on drugs, and allowing people to abuse me and die of a drug overdose in the middle of the street somewhere, in a gutter, or do I want to have a better life? I started to make some good choices at an early age. So thankfully at like 21. And but that's because I started to realize what kind of life I wanted to live. And it wasn't that. I was like, okay, no, I don't want that. And I want to have a good life. But it did, I started to have to see what it was allowing in my life, which was drug use, abuse, because I was abused as a child. So and there was drug use going on in my home. My brothers were on drugs. I got on drugs at a young age, followed them. They weren't giving me drugs. I think I don't. They might have actually. They did give me a few things, but the thing is we weren't all sitting around sharing drugs. You know what I mean? They wouldn't have wanted that for me. They were just drug users, um, but I sort of copied them, and I was never going to use drugs. I mean, up until about the age of 12, and then I decided to join them. I'm like, okay, I'm doing drugs. So it was just an escape mechanism for me. And, you know, it worked at that point, but it didn't work later in life. At the age of 21, I mean, by then I was really a heavy duty drug user. It could have gone so bad, really so bad. And I'm thankful that it didn't. And I'm really thankful to be here today. So as I'm saying, like, we have to make better choices for ourselves, right? And it's just so sad. Yeah, this is it's sad. I think there's a lot of people. My mother was a narcissist. She was a sadistic narcissist, and narcissists are really hard to deal with for sure. It is a real problem because a lot of people are narcissists. They don't even know they are. It's like, but all you have to do is just look at their behaviors and you're like, total narcissist. Um, so it's not uncommon, you know. We just have to be careful and watch out, watch behaviors very carefully. When I was, like I was talking about here earlier on the show, my first relationship with this guy was, I had no idea that he was going to be abusive because I grew up in abuse. So I didn't recognize the signals. Anybody else who would have grown up in a healthy environment with healthy relationship stuff, they would have seen those red flags really early. But I didn't snap until quite a long ways into the relationship, and until finally when he was starting to want to hit me, and he would punch the cupboard instead of me. But he was like, "I'm going to hurt you. I'm going to hurt you." So we broke it off. But I was like, "Well, why would you want to do that?" But he's like, "Well, because I don't have control over my actions, and I don't want to hurt you." So we broke it off. But the thing is I didn't recognize any of that stuff at first. See? So this is why I really knew I had a lot of work to do. You know what I mean? To learn what to look for, and that sort of thing. So I really didn't do a whole lot of work because I didn't do any work on my healing journey, period. But I was very untrusting of people, obviously, being abused as a child and then having this relationship go sour with starting to be abusive. Then I was like, wow, I can't really trust anybody, and just kind of closed off. So I didn't really do any work, but at least I didn't allow abuse around me anymore in other relationship type stuff. I was like, that's it. So when I got older, more able to deal with stuff, I realized that, hey, no, I'm not going to allow abuse in my life. Even before I started my healing journey, I was like, I don't want that. And I don't want a life like that. And I don't want to be abusive. So I'm going to have to find somebody who's going to treat me right so I can treat them right. And we can have a good life together. But, I had to make those choices. And that's why I'm saying we do have to make the best choices for ourselves. And no matter what they are, get ourselves to a safe environment, and keep people around us that are going to be good to us and we're going to be good to them. And it's going to be a mutual, healthy relationship, right? And not allow people to abuse us again, right? So important. So, well, I've been on for about an hour now, so I guess that's all I have to say on that subject. But I appreciate you all being here with me. I really do. And I wish you all the best, like I'm saying. If I can help you find resources or something, just let me know, or if you just want to chat, you can always get a hold of me on my website or on my email. All that information is on the under the about section on YouTube. I got the links there. And I just wish you a wonderful day. Take good care of yourself, and and don't give up, not ever. Like I always say on every show, if you think you're not going to make it, like for the next 5 minutes or 5 seconds, you need to call a crisis line. You really do. That's what I'm going to do. Yeah. If I get down to that point where I just can't do it anymore, I'm calling a crisis line. I'm going to stay alive. I'm going to win this fight, and I'm doing it now, and I'm going to continue to do that. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I want for you. Don't give up, my friends. I wish you a wonderful day. We'll talk to you real soon. Bye bye.